Reliability, the podcast from the ARC, Southern Maryland. Meet Neil Lichter. He's Program Director for Baltimore County Based Pathfinders for Autism. Our podcasting class in Waldorf talked to Neil via Zoom, and we found out more about the history and resources found at pathfindersforautism.org. Like a lot of organizations that benefit those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a caring parent helped launch the program.
BJ Surhoff, who played for a long time here in Baltimore as well as Milwaukee and Atlanta, had a long major league career. BJ, his wife Polly, a number of other families started the organization because 25 years ago, you couldn't just Google whatever you were looking for. You had to know somebody who knew somebody. You had to have a support group, a crew of people who had information and resources to share and providers that they could recommend and therapy ideas that they would share, and it provided support as well. And we've grown over 25 years, and our concentration is just the state of Maryland. And we do a lot here. Our website, pathfindersforautism.org, has resources for anybody. It's not just for autism, it's for any intellectual developmental disability. It's not just for parents or caregivers, it's for autistic individuals or individuals with other IDD. So we try and be very inclusive and try and cover things from lots of different bases here.
A lot of people who are learning about podcasting in my class, if they are a student or a client and they're young adults, they've gotten out of the public school system, how are you going to help them figure out, using Pathfinder's tools, how to be a better adult in this state?
Well, I think that's a great question, because I think there's a lot of information and resources that are available that are necessary when young adults hit 21 and are out of or even 18 and are out of the school system. And our website and our resource guide and our provider directory can be very helpful in providing tools that you're going to need along the way, whether it's something like we call it our Autism by Age Guide for 18 to 21 or 21 and over, and it's just things to think about. Have you looked into getting health insurance? Have you applied for SSI? Are you qualified for DDA? Are you receiving services? Do you know what an ABLE account is? And other tools. And those are a list of things to think about. And on the website, when you click, what's an ABLE account? And you click on that, it's going to take you to more information. So it can be a helpful guide, a helpful tool to help you lead you on your way. And it's not something like you have to get all of this done in this order, but it's things to think about, things to keep in the back of your mind, something you can put on your refrigerator door. So you go, okay, I'm going to try and take care of this off of my checklist today. Do you have a Maryland state ID? Are you looking to get a driver's license? If you're already a driver, how do you have a safe interaction with police during a traffic stop? These are all kinds of resources that our organization puts out there for people to use and share and benefit from.
What are some of the reasons why you got involved for Pathfinders for Autism? Everybody who seems to get involved with working with individuals with developmental disabilities has a personal reason why they got involved. Do you have one of those personal reasons?
Yes, guilty. I have a 20-year-old son. His name is Max. Max is autistic. And I became involved with Pathfinders because, to be honest, it was a very... I'm a big believer in good things come along sometimes at the right moments, and you can call them karma or whatever you'd like. But I'd been involved working with individuals with disabilities for a long time. I owned a rental van company, and we rented wheelchair accessible vehicles. So I was working in that field for a long time, renting those vehicles, running around all over Maryland and DC. And the opportunity came for me to close the business, and I was looking around for something that would give me some flexibility so I could still take Max to all of the different appointments and therapies and social skills groups that we were a part of. And I followed Pathfinders for Autism social media pages because they provided resources and information, and I used our website long before I became an employee. And a job opened up that provided the opportunity to help families who might need guidance or information or resources. And it works very well with a person who needs a flexible schedule because they understand flexible schedule needs and IEP meetings that need to be gone to and other things that go involved with, having a loved one with autism. So that's how I became involved within it. So it's something I'm very passionate about. It's something that's important to me because it gives me access to resources and information. And I also get to work with other parents of autistic individuals and autistic individuals. So I can always learn and get support and benefit from, the group that I have around me.
Have you had any incidences with Max or your family in which you had an uncomfortable meeting with law enforcement for whatever reason?
Well, yeah, my son is an overly friendly person and sometimes doesn't understand that there are times not to go up to people to say hello, even though you are the friendliest person in the world. Sometimes when people are working, you don't need to go up to them. So Max approaching, police officers while they're trying to do their job has been met with, a very stern response. So and that makes Max a little more anxious and impacts his ability to communicate as effectively and makes me see more behaviors with him. So when the officer doesn't realize that when you speak to Max in a non-friendly way, he will mirror your anxiety and he will magnify it. So his response is going to be bigger than the officer's response, and that's where it starts to escalate. So what starts as a very calm interaction has the possibility to escalate for just a miscommunication because of the way Max struggles with communication sometimes. So we've had one or two where it was just Max trying to be friendly and it was like not the opportune time to be friendly. But when we have the opportunity to say, okay, that officer is, standing out in front, you could certainly say hello. There's where we have those positive interactions with them, which is what we want to do when our organization puts together mock traffic stops or safety days or whatever we do. I invite him up and I have him come up and interact and say hello in these low anxiety environments, because the more he can practice and get comfortable in low anxiety environments, I think if it does happen for real and I don't happen to be there where I can help de-escalate and communicate, then hopefully he'll have the tools to be able to manage it himself.
Anybody in class ever have an opportunity to interact with police or security guards? Do you want to come on up and talk into the microphone so Neil can hear you? Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate you doing that. Hey, Neil, one of our students, Jonathan, is going to talk to you about his experience. Talking to the mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
I do, loud and clear.
Oh, good. Okay, what do I say?
Well, you could relate to the fact that you had an encounter with somebody like a security guard or a policeman.
Yeah, like a security guard.
What happened? Where were you?
Ooh.
Do you remember? Were you in a movie theater?
Yeah, I was in the movie theaters.
What were you doing?
Watching new movies.
Mm-hmm. And what happened that the security guard came up to you?
I don't know, no text, no talking.
So you were on your phone while the movie was on?
Yeah.
Well, that's understandable. A lot of people have their screens on while they're watching a movie.
Yeah.
So how did you feel when that person, that usher or that security guy came up and said, "Don't do this"? How did it make you feel?
Nervous or afraid.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil, please.
No, I can understand that. I mean, there are rules, and sometimes, maybe you didn't know, or maybe the movie hadn't started yet, or whatever it may be. And people do have a job to do, but it really does come down to, how do you ask somebody, and how do you present yourself when you ask somebody, hey, you need to turn your phone off. I mean, there are certainly nice ways to say it, where it's not going to make you nervous or feel uncomfortable. I mean, that gentleman does have a job to do, so he could certainly say, "Excuse me, sir, could I ask you to please turn that phone off? It's the light bothers other people." And that's a much nicer, calmer way to present information. And when I talk to police officers, I talk a lot about it's how you start the conversation that can lead to a positive interaction or a stressful interaction. So I always urge our officers, listen, you want to go up there and just start things off on the right foot. because I don't want a misunderstanding or a miscommunication to lead to any kind of a confrontation or anybody to be made to feel uncomfortable.
How did the officers feel about you telling them how to do their job?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think right up front, I'm very clear with officers, and I tell them I don't know how you do your job. So I'm trying. I always tell my officers I'm not trying to tell you how to be a police officer because I really don't know how you do your job, and I'm very appreciative of all the police officers around Maryland because they're very brave for what they do. What I try and stress is that they need to go home safe at the end of every night, and I'm not asking them to do anything that's different than what they've been trained to do. What I'm asking for is when they have opportunities to make a modification in the way they do something. So if my example for them is, if you're driving down the side of the road, officer, and you see a car burning on the side of the road, I'm not expecting any reasonable modifications for a person with autism in that burning car. I expect you to smash a window, pull the door open, yank that person out, get them safe, get away from the car, get everyone safe, and now you've got the situation, the emergency situation is now under control. At that point, the person you're dealing with on the side of the road may struggle to communicate, may need some accommodations, and at that point, when the situation is safe, under your control, and you have flexibility, can you make a reasonable modification in how you do something? Can you find another way to communicate? Can you write something down on a piece of paper and show it to somebody instead of asking them a question verbally over and over and over again, where verbal communication may not be the way they communicate? Maybe they sign things. Maybe they have a phone that they use to communicate, or a tablet that they use to communicate. Maybe it just takes them longer to communicate. So can you give that person some extra time to come up with answers? I know some of the autistic individuals I work with and train with, and then some of the people who I work with have autistic individuals as young adults and adults in their life struggle with sensory processing, loud noises, bright lights, things like that. Like a reasonable accommodation I ask for officers is, can you turn the lights off on the top of your car? Can you turn the squawky speaker down on your radio? Because you may not think that creates anxiety for somebody, but for someone who struggles with sensory processing, those lights and that sound might be very, very painful, very, very stressful, and their immediate reaction might be, I need to get away from whatever creates this pain. And now you've got someone who's going to turn around or run away from a loud noise, and running away from officers is never a good idea. Little reasonable modifications we look for officers to try and be able to make in safe situations. So to answer your question, I think that I do a good job of teaching without telling them how to be police. And I come at it from this is what I want my son to be safe, and I want them to be safe. So I think I dance a little fine line there. I try and talk to them and teach them without like lecturing to them as if they don't understand things.
What do you suggest people like your son, your 20-something-year-old adults with autism? They look like adults, very high-functioning adults. They look, quote unquote, normal.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get into a situation where somebody in authority is wondering why aren't they snapping to it, how do you want people to talk to police officers?
What I would suggest, and it's really somebody's personal choice if they wish to disclose whether or not they have a disability, but what I talk about is we're trying to train every police officer in Maryland at some point. The precincts that we cover are pretty far and wide across the state, the counties across the state, and we teach at the academy level as well as rotating officers through in-service. And I'm hoping that if you could say to an officer, "Officer, I have autism," that officer maybe has taken one of our trainings or has an understanding or an acceptance and awareness to say, all right, this person might struggle with communication, they might struggle with eye contact, they might have sensory issues, and they could start thinking, okay, maybe their lack of answering isn't belligerence or attitude or drugs, it's someone coming up with the right words, taking a little bit longer. So if you're comfortable to disclose and you're verbally able to do that, I think I would suggest that because I would like you to give that information so that you give the officer the opportunity to give you accommodations. that if we want to really get technical, the Americans with Disabilities Act requires officers to make these accommodations. So I think if you can identify as someone with autism or another cognitive disability, that can help.
Now, if you do an online search for an autism information card, you can either buy or design a business card-sized handout that you can give to police or people in authority that will explain that you are a person with autism. It will also explain that you might take some time to answer a question, have trouble making eye contact, get stressed when lights are flashing, and when there are loud sounds. On the back end of the card, you write down the name of a parent, brother, sister, personal care worker, and their phone numbers, so that if they need to, the law enforcement or security person can call them and talk to them about what you need them to understand about the situation that they're approaching you about. And this will help everybody stay calm. On our next podcast, our podcasting class is in New York, Southern Maryland space in Calvert County. And that's where we met up with a Calvert County Sheriff's deputy who has worked with Pathways on training law enforcement officers.
My name is Nick DeFelice, and Nick just works perfectly well.
Come back next week for that special bonus episode of See Me, See My Ability, the podcast from the ARC, Southern Maryland. And before you go, please leave a review for us. Give us some stars on your favorite podcasting app that you've downloaded on your smartphone. We're also found on the web at arcsomd.org. I'm Rita Rich.